Good morning, class. Welcome to week number 6 of our journey through psychological theories of values development. So today, we shift focus from individual reasoning to the powerful influence of social interaction. Unlike in our recent or previous discussions or lessons from Piaget and Kohlberg, unlike Piaget and Kohlberg, who emphasize stages and internal logic, Vygotsky believed that the mind is shaped in social settings through dialogue, mentorship, and shared cultural tools. So in this lecture, we will uncover how language and community become the primary vehicles for learning and how values are transmitted through everyday interactions. So this framework is crucial not only for understanding cognitive growth but also for building values-based education. Of course, in our classrooms and ministry. So we will connect theory with practical Filipino classroom realities and see how educators can become transformative facilitators of moral development. So let's begin this exploration of Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. So where learning is not a solitary act but a deeply collaborative process embedded in culture. So let's start by shifting our perspective. What what if learning is not isn't just about individuals' discovery, but a shared journey? So in the past weeks, we examined theories that place moral and cognitive development within individuals' mind. But Vygotsky invites us to see learning as something inherently social, deeply embedded in the context of family, culture, and community. So we are not born with blank slates to feel alone. From infancy, we are immersed in language, rituals, and expectations that shape our thinking long before we are conscious of it. So Vygotsky's insight was a simple yet transformative. Before we think independently, we think through others. So this changes how we teach. So this changes how we teach. Learning is not delivered, it's co-constructed. So that's the heart of this lecture. To understand, to understand how learning happens between people before it takes root within. In today's session, we'll unpack one of the most influential learning theories of the 20th century, and that is Vygotsky's sociocultural theory. Unlike theories that focus on the individual mind developing in isolation, Vygotsky's work insists that knowledge is fundamentally social. And he argued that what we learn and how we think are shaped by interactions, pakikisalamuha, pakikipagkapwa. So by interaction with others and the cultural tools we use, especially language. So you'll be introduced to the core ideas that define his theory. Ito yung ZPD or the Zone of Proximal Development, ZPD. And then, meron din doon on the Vygotsky theory, yung scaffolding, and also the power of language and the essential role of teachers as facilitators, not information deliverers. And this theory not only shapes how we understand student learning, but also informs how we should teach, mentor, and lead others, whether in classrooms, communities, or in our ministries. To appreciate the uniqueness of Vygotsky's theory, let's recall two earlier frameworks that we have explored. So remember yung kay John Piaget? So John Piaget reviewed development as a set of biological stages driven by the child's individual exploration. For example, a child progresses from concrete to abstract reasoning by acting on the world. Kay Lawrence Kohlberg naman, focus on moral reasoning. How individuals justify right and wrong through internal stages like obeying rules or applying ethical principles. Both thinkers highlight, John Piaget and Lawrence Kohlberg highlight individual mental processes as the key to growth. On Vygotsky, however, offers a radical departure, and he believed we learn not in isolation but in relationship. It is through cultural tools like our language, stories, traditions, and guided interaction with others that cognitive and moral development flourish. And this shift from solo reasoning to social mediation reshapes how we learn, learn and form values. So why do we need to move beyond the idea of the student as a solitary learner? Because that view ignores the reality of how humans develop. Vygotsky argued that every cognitive leap a person makes a preceded preceded by a social interaction like dialogue, a shared task, a story heard. And it's through these experiences that ideas take root. So when learners participate in meaningful social activity such as discussion, group project, or cultural ritual, they encounter perspectives, tools, and guidance they won't discover alone. And these shared moments stretch their thinking and challenge them to grow. In a classroom shaped by social learning, students become not just recipients of knowledge, but co-creators. They learn how to reason, communicate, empathize, and apply values because those skills are modeled, discussed, and practiced together. So, Lev Vygotsky was a brilliant mind whose ideas would reshape how we understand learning. So he was born in 1896 in what is now Belarus. Vygotsky lived during a period of revolutionary change in Russia. So politically, intellectually, and scientifically during those revolutionary changes in Russia. Amid these shifts, he sought to answer a deep question. Ito yung tanong niya. How does culture shape the human mind? How does culture shape the human mind? So rejecting the dominant behaviorists at yung Gestalt models of his time, he focused instead on how people learn through language, symbols, and interaction. And he get from the idea of Karl Marx. No, drawing from the Karl Marx, he adapted the idea that human activity is shaped by material and social conditions, not to study economics, but to explore education and cognition. So his academic career was tragically cut short by tuberculosis. Siya ay namatay at the age of 37 years old. And yet, in just over a decade of work, he left behind a legacy that has shaped classrooms around the world. From the concepts of scaffolding and ZPD to the value of dialogic or dialogic teaching and moral mediation. So to understand Vygotsky theory, we must look at the intellectual soil in which it grew. First and foremost, he was deeply influenced by Karl Marx. Not in the political sense, no? Kasi si Karl Marx ay siya yung, I think, na influence ng communism. But not in the political sense, yung influence ni Karl Marx sa kanya, but in the belief that human activity and true are shaped by our social and material environments. Vygotsky redirected this insight toward learning, proposing that mental development is a social process mediated by cultural tools. So linguistics also played a key role. Vygotsky believed that language is not merely a way to communicate ideas. It actually structures how we think. The way we speak shapes the way we reason, the way we imagine and remember. So finally, education itself was Vygotsky's passion. He was the classroom as a site of transformation, or he saw the classroom as a site of transformation. And through dialogue, storytelling, and collaborative action, students don't just absorb facts. No, they don't just absorb facts, but they internalize inside. They internalize meaning. And his work invites us to see teaching as a deeply relational and cultural act. At the time Vygotsky was writing, two major schools of thought dominated psychology. Yung una, behaviorism, at yung pangalawa, Gestalt. Behaviorism led by thinkers like B.F. Skinner and Ivan Pavlov treated learning as a mechanical process. Remember, no? Doon sa kanyang experiment, yung aso, no? Yung stimulus uh, led to a response, no? Yung pagkain stimulus led to a response. And knowledge is essentially conditioning doon sa behaviorism. So Vygotsky rejected this reduction. He believed humans are not animals to be trained, but cultural beings whose minds are formed through interaction. Just that psychology, on the other hand, during this time, emphasized perception and the structural organization of thought. It offered it offered a richer view than behaviorism, but still failed to account for the social roots of cognition. Vygotsky argued that meaning and reasoning don't just arise in isolation. They are constructed through cultural and interpersonal engagement. And this led him to forge a new path instead of asking how individuals respond or perceive. He asked, how do people internalize the world around them? And this framing laid the foundation for socio-cultural theory. Vygotsky theory stands on three key assumptions that turn traditional views of development on their head. First, he believed that learning begins not within the individual but in their interactions with others. Knowledge is first social and only later becomes personal. And this challenges any model that sees learning as purely internal. Second, Vygotsky emphasized that culture provides the tools we use to think, whether it's language, counting systems, or even local stories. These cultural elements shape how we approach problems, reason through decisions, and express values. Third, and perhaps most revolutionary, Vygotsky insisted that learning drives development, not the other way around. When students are supported in activities just beyond their current ability, they grow into new capacities. This is the root of the famous uh, ZPD and scaffolding concepts, which we'll explore next. Okay, assumption 1. Vygotsky's first core assumption turns conventional thinking upside down. Cognitive development begins in the social realm, not within the individual. When we engage in shared activity, whether it's reading with parent, discussing with peer, or receiving feedback from a teacher, we're learning how to think. And Vygotsky described this process as one of inter, internalization. What is the first external, like social language, behavior, reasoning, becomes part of the child's internal toolkit. That's why internalization. And this challenges the myth of the lone learner and instead positions education as a fundamentally relational act. So, every student benefits from guidance provided by someone more experienced. That's why that's why classroom interactions like questioning, group work, mentoring are not add-ons but core strategies for building reasoning and values. A quiet classroom may seem orderly, but it's the buzzing one, rich in guided conversation that fosters real development. So Vygotsky's second key insight is that culture is not just background. It actively shapes how we think. Every culture passes down a set of cognitive tools like yung language, symbols, procedures, moral codes, and even ways of reasoning. These aren't optional. They're the very means by which we learn. So, think of a child learning to count. In one culture, she may use an abacus. Alam niyo yung abacus, yung ginagamit ng mga Chinese, no? In other, they will use fingers. In another, digital games. And each tool carries not only a function, but a way of structuring thought. That's why Vygotsky called these cultural tools mediators of learning. So class for educators, this means we must connect learning to students' lived realities, yung talagang nangyayari sa buhay nila. When we use examples from their community, stories from their language, or metaphors from their experiences, we don't just help them understand. We help them think. Learning becomes meaningful because it is embodied in what they already know. So, meron ba kayong question? So, if you have questions, you can chat me sa ating group chat. So, let us now proceed to Vygotsky third core assumption challenges one of the most respected names in developmental psychology. Sino yung mga yon? John Piaget. So Piaget claimed that children must reach a certain stage of development before they can learn particular concepts. Si Vygotsky naman flip this. Ang sabi niya, learning actually stimulates development. What does this mean practically? It means a child can perform at a higher level when given the right support. The mental capacity needed for skill is formed in the act of doing it, of course with guidance. It's not about waiting until they are ready. It's about helping them become ready through teaching. This insight leads to a crucial teaching principle. Ano yan? Don't just teach what students already know. Teach what they're close to knowing with help. And these are the moments of greatest growth. That's why scaffolding, which we'll explore soon, is such a powerful instructional tool. So Vygotsky's most powerful contribution to education is the concept of ZPD. Ano yung ZPD? Zone of Proximal Development or ZPD. Imagine three concentric circles. The innermost is what a learner can already do independently. So yun yung una, no, yung kanyang innermost. And then the middle ring, no, yung lalagpas kumbaga sa greatest commandment, meron kang sa iyong family first, your first ministry, and then your neighbor, and to the outmost part of the earth. So, parang ganito siya, no? So, meron siyang innermost, and then the middle ring is what they can do with help. And that the outermost circle includes what they cannot yet do at all. So, the CPD is that sweet spot in the middle. Yung middle, yung helping. It's the zone where students are challenged but not overwhelmed. Where nandun yung teachers o yung kanyang peer supports and teachers or peer support makes learning possible. This is where meaningful, lasting learning takes place, according kay Vygotsky. So understanding the ZPD helps educators target instruction, guide interaction, and avoid both understimulation and discouragement. It recalls for attentive, responsive teaching that adapts to each learner's potential. In the next slides, we'll see how scaffolding brings this zone to life. So to truly grasp the power of the zone of proximal development, we need to visualize. No, we need to visualize it. Imagine a target with 3 rings. The center is what the learner can already do. No help needed. Alam na niya. And the outermost ring is what they cannot yet do, even with support. It's out of reach. But the middle ring, the ZPD, is where the magic happens. These are the tasks that require just the right amount of support to complete. They are slightly above the learner's current ability but within potential reach. With guidance from teacher, a parent, or even a peer, the learner builds new skills that eventually become independent. Kaya nga kapag yung bata ay walang tumutulong sa kanya, for example, yung maglakad, hindi kaagad siya matututo. Hindi walang nagturo sa kanya sa pagbabasa, hindi kaagad siya matututo. So effective instruction should always aim here, not repeating what students already know and not overwhelming them, but stretching them gently, intentionally, just enough to grow. So let's bring the theory of ZPD to life with a classroom example. Imagine a second grade student who can recognize basic words but struggles to read full sentences. On their own, they plateau. But with a teacher's guidance, modeling reading, prompting with questions, offering encouragement, they start reading short paragraphs. At first, the teacher reads alongside the student. Then the student reads with prompts. Eventually, the support fades. The skill that once required help is now independent. So this is ZPD in motion, no? Support enables progress and then steps aside. This approach allows us to calibrate instruction to where learning can happen, not just where it already is. The student grows not by repetition of easy tasks, but by being gently stretched and scaffolded into new capability. Yun yung pag tinutulungan siya. Yun yung tinatawag nating guidance or scaffolding. So, not all learning is equal. When instruction is misaligned with students' readiness, learning suffers. Diba? Pag misalign yung instruction. So, hindi pa ready yung bata. So, yung learning suffers. If tasks are too easy, something the student can already do alone, then we see boredom. So, hindi na-challenge yung bata. So, the learner cost and valuable class time is wasted. On the other hand, if the task is too difficult, even with help, no, kahit may tutulong, the result is frustration. The learner may feel incapable, give up, or develop anxiety. So neither extreme supports grow. The zone of proximal development is the balance point, kaya nga nasa middle. It's where the student is challenged just enough to grow, but not too much that they fail. Here, support plays a vital role, whether through teacher prompts, peer guidance, or tools. This is why good teaching is not about content delivery, but about accurate calibration, knowing what each student is ready to tackle with help. So now that we've explored the ZPD, let's talk about the strategy that activates it. Ano yun? Scaffolding. Although the term came later through Jerome Bruner, the concept is pure Vygotsky. Scaffolding means offering temporary intentional support so that learners can accomplish tasks they could they could manage alone. It's like training wheels on a bike. At first, the teacher might model a solution or guide the learner step by step. As the student becomes more capable, the support is reduced until they can do it solo. This dynamic, responsive support is what real teaching looks like. Importantly, scaffolding isn't about doing the work for the student. Hindi ganon, no? It's about equipping them to eventually do it themselves. When done well, scaffolding sends a powerful message. Sabi niya, you are capable. Let me help you see it. So scaffolding isn't random help. It follows a progression. Let's look the stages. First comes modeling. The teacher or peer shows how to do the task, breaking it down into manageable steps. This is crucial when the learner is unfamiliar with the process. Next is guided practice. The learner tries it themselves but with ongoing support. This might include prompts, reminders, or corrections. It's a safe zone to make mistakes and learn through feedback. Finally, scaffolding fades. The learner does the task independently, having internalized both the skill and the process. And this journey from observation to autonomy reflects how knowledge and confidence grow together. So effective teachers move fluidly through these stages, always observing, adjusting, and releasing uh, responsibility at the right moment. So scaffolding isn't one size fits all. It's about tailoring support to meet learners where they are. Let's look at practical ways scaffolding happens in real classrooms. First, we have verbal prompts. These aren't answers, but nudges. A teacher might say, "What could come next?" or "What do you think that is?" And this helps students engage more deeply without doing the thinking for them. Another method is the think aloud. Think aloud. The teacher models their thought process aloud, like solving a math problem step by step or analyzing a paragraph. This gives students insight into how an expert approaches a task. Finally, scaffolding can be social. Peer collaboration allows more advanced students to guide others, and even the act of explaining helps both parties. And this is where Vygotsky's idea of more capable others truly shines. So language. So language for Vygotsky is more than a medium of expression. It's a tool of cognition. He believed that as we speak, we learn to think. Our words shape how we analyze, remember, and solve problems. In classrooms, this means teachers should not silence students. Instead, they should foster dialogue. When students discuss, explain, and reflect aloud, so they are not being distracted, they are actively thinking. So language externalizes thought before it becomes internal reasoning. So moreover, language carries culture through idioms, stories, proverbs, and conversational styles. Learners inherit the values and cognitive habits of their communities. In Filipino classrooms, for instance, words like pakikisama or hiya encode complex moral norms that shape behavior. So when students speak, they are also learning what to value and how to reason. Vygotsky identified three forms of speech that illustrate how language becomes taught. First is social speech, what we use to communicate with others. Social speech. This is where all language learning begins, in conversations and shared experience. Next comes private speech. If you've ever heard a child say aloud, I'll do this first, then that you've you've witnessed this stage. It's self-talk that helps guide action and thinking rather than being a distraction. It shows developing control over behavior and condition. Finally, private speech becomes internalized. This inner speech is silent but powerful. It's how we plan, reflect, and reason. In essence, thinking itself is social speech that has moved inward. So understanding these stages helps educators support verbal reasoning in the classroom and value every moment a student thinks out loud. So what does all this mean for the classroom? It means language must be more than a vehicle for reciting answers. It should be a tool for thinking. So when students explain their reasoning aloud through think alouds, discussions, or presentations, they don't just show what they know, they clarify and expand it. Vygotsky advocated for reciprocal reciprocal dialogue, where teachers ask probing questions, not just deliver content. And these conversations push students into their ZPD, where they must stretch their thinking but with support. And we must also respect linguistic diversity, allowing students to process ideas in Filipino or their local dialects so that they can deepen their understanding before they can translate into academic English. And this bridges culture, cognition, and communication. So Vygotsky emphasized that we don't experience reality directly. We encounter it through cultural tools. And these include both physical tools like books, rulers, and computers, and symbolic ones like language, maps, and moral codes. For example, a Filipino student learning about heroism, heroism might read the story of Jose Rizal. And this story isn't just information. It's a tool that conveys cultural values like sacrifice, courage, and responsibility. Such tools mediate how students think about the world and their place in it. And this gives the teacher a powerful role as a cultural mediator. So your job is to help students use the right tools to grasp abstract concepts, whether through a local story, a proverb, a picture, or a digital simulation. You're connecting content with context. So you bridge the known and the new ones. So Vygotsky described internalizations as the process by which what begins in social interaction becomes part of our inner world. And this concept is key to both learning and values formation. So initially, children imitate what they see. For example, gestures, words, behaviors. And over time, these external behaviors become habits, and eventually those habits become internal conviction o yung tinatawag nating internalization. So think of a teacher class who greets students warmly every day. Meron bang ganon na teacher? No, for example, sa TCC, meron bang teacher who greets you warmly every day na hindi nagsusungit, no? At first, students simply respond. Later, they begin greeting each other without prompting. No, na-internalize niya. Eventually, they do so out of personal principle. So, respect has been internalized. And this model applies powerfully to values education. Moral development doesn't come only from lectures. It comes from participation in respectful, ethical communities. So teachers play a formative role not just in what they say, but in how they live and guide those social practices. So let's look more closely at internalization through the lens of values education. Children do not start with mature moral reasoning, tama? They learn through imitation and participation, right? A student might initially say thank you or help clean up only because it expected. But as these actions are reinforced through classroom culture and peer behavior, they become what? They become habits. Eventually, these habits transform into convictions. A child who used to return borrowed items just because the teacher said so begins to do it on their own. Why? Because they now believe it's the right thing to do. And that's internalization. So what does all of this mean for how we teach? First, it requires a shift in how we see the classroom. It's no longer a room full of isolated learners, but a community of thinkers engaged in dialogue. When students share ideas, ask questions, and work collaboratively, they co-construct knowledge. The teacher's role also changes. Rather than simply delivering content, the teacher becomes a guide, someone who facilitates inquiry, models reasoning, and supports students as they move through their uh, ZPD or proximal development. Finally, we prioritize process over product. Yes, answers matter, but how we arrive at them and how we reason together matters more. In this socio-cultural model, learning is not about perfect recall. It's about shared growth shaped by social interaction and cultural meaning. By the way, itong video na ito, meron siyang part 1. Yung part 1 ay ikakat ko mamaya ito, and then mamaya mag-record na ulit ako ng part 2. Okay, collaborative learning. So collaborative learning transforms the classroom into a network of supportive relationships. Vygotsky emphasized that learners don't grow in isolation. Tandaan nyo yan, according to Vygotsky, like kay John Piaget, pwede siya matuto base doon sa kanyang cognitive development. But kay Vygotsky, emphasized that learners don't grow in isolation. Instead, they develop through interaction, especially with peers who are slightly more advanced. Kaya nga kung gusto mong matuto yung anak mo, no, itabi mo dun sa matatalinong mga bata. And in peer tutoring, the more capable other isn't always the teacher. It can be a fellow student. The tutor reinforces their own understanding by teaching, while the learner benefits from familiar, accessible explanations. And this reciprocal relationship builds both competence and confidence. Group work is more than just teamwork. When designed well, it activates each learner's zone of proximal development. It's in this social zone where ideas are challenged, explained, and refined. And that deep learning takes place. So the classroom becomes a space of construction or co-construction where knowledge grows in conversation. So in the socio-cultural classroom, the teacher is not just the star of the show, no? So tandaan niyo yan, sa ating 21st century learner, hindi na tayo ang bida, no? Although, syempre, may mga sometimes na, di ba, recently, merong mga Teacher's Day, tayo yung bida doon, no? Pero in the classroom, the teacher is not the star of the show. They are the guide, rather than delivering knowledge in monologue. They co-construct understanding with students. Nung unang panahon, si teacher lang ang palaging bida. 'Di ba? Pag sumigaw na siya, takot ka na. So magkaiba na noon sa ngayon. And this shift means asking, not answering. No, not means asking, not answering. Powerful teaching often comes in the form of proving questions, yung asking. So, for example, what do you think that? What evidence supports your idea? So, yan na yung tinutukoy. No? It is not answers but good questions. Or can someone add to that thought? So, you can ask those questions. And these questions push students into their zone proximal development, prompting reflection and deeper engagement. So as students learn to speak up, reason aloud, and build on each other's ideas, they develop confidence in their thinking. The classroom becomes a dialogue not just between teacher and student but among peers. And the teacher, by modeling inquiry and respect, nurtures a space of shared intellectual growth. Okay, malapit na matapos yung part 1. No? 2 slides na lang ito and then next. Tapos i-cut ko na and then sa part 2 video naman. Okay, one of the most powerful ways to implement Vygotsky theory is by making learner culturally relevant. Di ba? Napaka-importante na yan. Relevant. Culturally relevant. Students learn best when lessons are anchored in what they already know, like yung family stories, local traditions, community events, and native language. Kaya nga meron tayong mga mother tongue. In Filipino classrooms, this could mean using local folk tales to discuss moral values. Naalala ko nung bata ako, merong mga folk tales about si maganda at si malakas, no, kung paano nag-start yung tao, no, nag-start sa pamamagitan ng kawayan. Then naalala ko rin si Pagong at saka si Matching. And then may mga lessons din na yung isang tao o isang bata na ayaw sumunod, no? Or ibig sabihin, pag inutusan siya, hindi niya makita. And then nangyari, naging ano siya, pinya, no? Maraming mata. So ito yung mga pwedeng nating gamitin in Filipino classroom, no? Using local folk tales to discuss moral values, referencing barangay life when teaching about cooperation, or allowing students to explain ideas in Filipino before translating to English. So by connecting the abstract to the familiar, educators help students feel seen, di ba? Understood and empowered. This approach bridges local identity with global thinking, making learning not just cognitive, but personal and transformational. So in sociocultural classrooms, feedback and dialogue are not side elements. Hindi yung add-on. They are central. Yung feedback and dialogue. They are central to the learning process. So when teachers genuinely listen and respond, they model critical thinking and create space for shared understanding. So feedback should not merely correct, it should scaffold. No, hindi mo sasabihin, napakabobo mo, hindi yon. No, it should be scaffold. So when you say you're on the right track, now consider this. We guide the learner toward deeper insight. For example, may sumagot, hindi mo sasabing mali, kundi malapit na, malapit na. This makes feedback a tool for growth, not just evaluation. So reciprocal teaching brings this principle to life. In this method, students take turns leading discussion on readings or lessons, practicing summarization, inquiry, and reflection. And these shared leadership models, this shared leadership models intellectual collaboration and empowers student voice. Okay? So, ikakat ko na muna itong part 1 na video, and then later ay magre-record na naman ako ng part 2 na video. Thank you and see you sa aking next video.